welcome back for another Q&A with a Psych Nurse Practitioner. This week, I'm going to be going over a couple of different questions. They're all in the same vein, though, about creating a life that makes you feel exhausted at times. So the first question is, why am I exhausted by a life I worked so hard to build? Great question. We all have these dreams and aspirations of building this life. We have these goals. And when we reach these goals and these accomplishments, we think that okay, then I can sit back and relax. Then I will feel better. Then I will feel safe. Then I won't have to work as hard. But what happens is the personality traits and the character traits that we have, that we possess, that we utilize in order to attain these goals, those don't just vanish overnight. Those don't just stop overnight either. So once you establish that you have these goals and you attain them, it's also about understanding the importance of giving your nervous system and your body that safety signal that, hey, we made it. Now we can kick back a little bit. Or it's safe to not have to be so overachieving, overproductive, go, 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 right? So sometimes life can feel exhausting because you build this ideal in your head without really knowing. I mean, that's what most goals and dreams are. We don't really know what it's going to look like when we get there. And it can entail things that we did and did not anticipate, right? So being exhausted by a life that you work so hard to build is not about dismantling the whole life, unless that's your goal, but it's not about dismantling. It's about finding the good parts of it. And hey, these are the parts that I really appreciate and want to keep. And these are the parts that maybe are driving me to a state of exhaustion that I don't need so much anymore. I would also ask, are you the same person now that you have built these goals and you've accomplished these goals, or you've built this life, right? Was it your dream, or was it your parents or your coworkers or whomever, right? Friends, family, etc. We can get into that trap of wanting people to be proud of us, meeting certain expectations based on the role that we play in our family. So is this your life? Is this your dream? If not, then you need to reconnect with yourself and figure out what it is that you want. But if it is, and those are things that you did actually want to accomplish, then great. Then give yourself time to celebrate that. That can be small things by checking in with yourself. That can be small techniques of checking in with yourself and celebrating, forcing yourself to really be grateful. A lot of people are big on gratitude journals. As you guys know, I'm not a big journal person, but I do like to take time to reflect on gratitude. So knowing those things like, oh, I wouldn't be able to do A, B, and C if I hadn't worked so hard to build this type of life, right? Or I wouldn't be able to enjoy these things or enjoy, going for a walk in the middle of the day if I hadn't worked so hard to build the life I have now, right? There are times when it can be stressful, obviously. But again, as we've talked about before, use stress, the good stress versus distress, the bad stress, as long as that stress comes to an end at some point. So that's sometimes why you can feel exhausted by a life that you've built, because there's a lot of things that we don't anticipate. And when we get there, we need to recognize that it's time to reevaluate, right? Every 3-4 months, I go through kind of what I want my goals are for that quarter, for that 4, 5, 6 months if I need to. And are those still in alignment with who I am becoming and who I am today? Are they not in alignment? Does that really not fit me anymore? That can also be a drain on you too, because if you're just pushing to meet a goal to say that you accomplished it, but it's not really in alignment with who you are and what you want in life, then that's not going to feel very fulfilling and meaningful to you. It's going to feel draining and exhausting too. So why am I exhausted by a life I worked so hard to build? It's really about reevaluation. I would say starting with, is this your life? Are these the things that you really wanted? Sometimes life gets busy with work and kids and school and taking care of family members and doing vacation, all these things, right? So it's just reevaluating what needs to take priority in your life, really kind of triaging for what's the best case and the worst case. What are some things that you can let go of? What are some things that you don't need to be so engaged in anymore in order to have the time to enjoy what you have built for yourself? So that can be a reason why, if you're feeling a little bit drained by life, and sometimes, life is stressful. We live in a very fast-paced society. Sometimes it's important to take time to reset too. Why does rest feel uncomfortable or even unsafe? This is a great question. I get this one a lot. A lot of times it's because your nervous system hasn't learned, your body hasn't learned that that being non-productive is safe, right? It learns that we need to stay busy, we need to be productive, we got to check all the boxes, we have to make our list, and we have to tell everybody these are all the things that I did, right? In order for this level of acceptance. And when we have the opposite of that, kind of like when we've built this life and we've met these goals, we don't have to be as productive. We can kind of sit back and be maintaining, maybe not coasting, but maintaining. And our nervous system was like, whoa, wait, what? We were just in like overdrive. And now we're just like kind of coasting compared to where we were. So your body and your nervous system have to get that message too. A lot of times we equate worth being conditional upon productivity and value. That comes a lot from our jobs. That can also come from our home life. That can come from our community, our church, whomever, right? So a lot of times productivity is equated with worth. And if we aren't as productive as our peers, we can feel not as worthy. We can feel undeserving. We can feel a lack of confidence. Those are very real things. When you slow down, whatever's been going on, you've worked so hard to achieve these goals, and when you've met them and you want to kind of sit back and reflect a little bit, all the things that were bubbling under the surface that you've had to kind of suppress and push down and not pay attention to in order to achieve goals, well, now those things come up and they're ready to be addressed. They've been ready to be addressed, but we just haven't had time. We've had to prioritize other things. But now that we've had those things completed, now this other stuff comes up, and that can feel really, really uncomfortable, and our nervous system will resist it and say, I know how to feel more comfortable. I'll just get busy again. And that can feel like a loss of control, like you've dropped your guard down, something bad's going to happen. So it's not really laziness or a personality flaw. It's more of a mindset issue when it comes to that. It's basically a survival adaptation that doesn't fit your current life. So it worked when you were building, it worked to get you where you are today, which is great. But now that you've achieved these things, or now that you're in a different place, we've got to change that mindset, which also includes giving the message to our body and our nervous system that it's safe to do so as well. Because talking, rationalizing, theorizing things in our mind can only go so far. We have to actually feel it in the body as well for that to kind of click and make sense and stick, really. Our nervous system doesn't respond to logic. It responds to feeling, the intuitive part of things. So telling yourself, you're allowed to rest, you did good, look at these things, that our nervous system doesn't care. Our nervous system is like, that doesn't matter. We still got to do more, right? So until your body feels safe enough to believe it, all the talk is not going to help you. All the affirmations are not going to help you. You have to actually start believing it, feeling it in some part of your body as well. And this is where somatic practices can be incredibly helpful. So it's about building that safety in the body, not just the mind. The mind is half the battle, but it's the body as well. And that kind of takes me into what I wanted to talk about more today. Is I get a lot of questions like, what does dysregulation look like? How do I know if it's dysregulation? And I want to preface this by saying not everything in life, every situation deserves a quote unquote diagnosis or a label, but it's important to kind of know, to give yourself some language for what's happening in your situation. A lot of times, especially with trauma, we don't have the emotional language or the verbal language acuity to describe things. It's more of a feeling or a disconnection that we feel, right? That numbness, that cut offness. So it's important to kind of develop that vocabulary, that emotional vocabulary as well. And so this is not a diagnosis by any means, but sometimes it's helpful to kind of say, oh, that's what that's called. And I want to preface this also by saying that these are not negative things, right? I'm going to talk about hypervigilance. I'm going to talk about the fawn response, and I'm going to talk about the fight response. These are not negative things. They keep us safe. They keep us going in life. They protect us. They help us achieve things that we want to achieve, and they're not negatives. It only becomes negative when it becomes disruptive to your life, when it's an involuntary action that you're constantly doing and then secretly regretting later or building resentment for, right? So that's when it becomes problematic. If you can have that situation and be like, yeah, I can recognize that I overworked a lot and sacrificed time with my family and my kids to get me where I am today, to be able to afford college or vacation or buying a house, whatever it is, right? It's important to say, yeah, that hypervigilance served that time, but now I don't need that. And now I can say, you know what, it's okay to be not as hypervigilant, to not be as overproductive. So that's the difference there. If you're just saying, well, I don't feel safe unless I'm overproductive, that's a difference. If you feel like you can do it, as long as it's voluntarily coming from you as a voluntary action, not an involuntary action, that's the importance. So let's talk about hypervigilance. What does hypervigilance look like? It looks like conscientiousness, right? This is the person that is always the most prepared in the meeting. They've anticipated every question, every answer, every response, every objection, everything that could go wrong. And everyone says, oh, they're just so thorough. They're so detail oriented. But really, it's a constant scan for threats. That's hypervigilance. Maybe you're reading the room constantly. You anticipate people's needs, right? Big thing with healthcare workers, especially nursing, that's one thing that they teach. One of the tenets in nursing school is to anticipate the patient's needs. Well, that's great for people that have significant trauma because you can walk into a room and scan the room and you can tell who needs what, who's in a good mood, who's in a bad mood, who's feeling down, who's feeling ecstatic. You intuitively kind of sense these things sometimes. You can notice when your boss is quiet, when something's off with a colleague or a peer or a family member, right? So usually people are like, oh, you're so emotionally intelligent, you're so in tune. Well, yes and no. It's just that you never stopped scanning for danger, because if you aren't accepted into your tribe, which James Bradshaw talks a lot about and Caroline Myss talks a lot about in their books, if you're not accepted into your tribe or your group for safety and security, that can lead to you feeling danger, like you're on the outs, like your survival is a threat, right? It can look like double, triple, quadruple checking your work before you send anything, before you turn in that paper, before you complete any paperwork, right? And it's not necessarily because that you're a perfectionist, but you probably learned early on that mistakes had very real, very impactful consequences, and you don't ever want to feel that again. Nervous system never got the memo that it's okay to be imperfect, it's okay to make mistakes, because we're all human, we all make mistakes, right? Maybe you are over preparing for conversations that you're nervous about, rehearsing what you're going to say. I talk about this a lot with people in one-to-ones. Anxiety, that rumination subset of anxiety can look like I'm rehearsing, well, if they say this, then I'm going to say that. If they say that, then I'm going to say this. And if this happens, then I'll react this way. And if A and B happen, then I'll do C and D, right? It can be all this rehearsing, which is really tiring. It's really exhausting because most of the time, none of what we rehearse actually comes true. So it's a waste of energy and time, but it can look like, a very proactive, well-honed communication skill. But it's actually your nervous system just trying to eliminate any kind of unpredictability, any kind of rejection at all. So this can also look like you being the one that you remember everything. You remember everyone's weird, rare dietary allergies, everyone's preferences, their favorite color, their favorite snack, how they like their coffee, right? Any upcoming big events or dates in their life, anniversaries of your coworkers, right? Stuff that you normally wouldn't know or care about. People think that you're very thoughtful and attentive, and actually you're just tracking a lot of other people's moods so that you feel accepted. So hypervigilance also can look like pushing through illness, skipping your own doctor's appointments, being overcommitting to things and having to cancel plans with close loved ones because you've overcommitted to your church or your school or your work or whatnot. And they say, oh, she's just so dedicated. He's just so dedicated to, work and blah, blah, blah. Guess what? Work doesn't care. They just don't. Your nervous system's just in this low grade fight or flight all the time. You can get irritable, impatient when things are out of your hands or you aren't involved in the decision-making process, because that feels very scary, because stillness, quiet, not being in control feels unsafe. The other thing I wanted to talk about was fawn response. So fawn response can look like you are a great collaborator. You are easygoing, go with the flow, you're flexible, you're a team player. Sure, whatever everybody else wants, right? And that's basically because you don't have your opinion. You feel like having your own opinion might be dangerous, might make you an outsider, might make people say or think differently or perceive you differently, right? You probably take on extra work, you overcommit, again, similar to hypervigilance, right? You just don't know how to say no, even though quietly you're kind of resentful on the inside, like, oh, I shouldn't have overcommitted. Oh, how did I get involved in this? Why did I join a book club when I have so many other things going on, right? You adjust your personality depending on who you're with. This is part of that fawn response, like just trying to be in the middle, just trying to stay safe and keep everybody happy, right? You smooth over tension. You might be the mediator in your family. You kind of smooth things over. You want to make sure everybody's comfortable. If you do happen to have a conversation that involves some sort of conflict, usually you feel like you need to replay it. What did I say that was wrong? Does that person still like me? Did I upset anybody else? I wonder what other people are going to think. What if they misconstrue how I said things and tell other people? Now other people are going to think this. I'm going to have to over-explain myself, right? We get into that whole spiral of rumination there with that. It's just your nervous system gets oriented around making other people comfortable, and you're used to that. That got you to where you were because that's tied to safety in some way. And then the last one I'll talk about is the fight response. This can look like just absolute relentless drive, just ongoing. You have your next goals for the next quarter, the next year, the next 5 years before you even finish this year's goals, right? You are extremely hardworking, you're dependable, reliable. This looks like relentless drive. Your coworkers are like, oh my gosh, they're so helpful. They have such a hard work ethic. Really, you're just running on cortisol. You can't let a project be good enough. And it's not about that it has to be perfect because you have high standards again, but it's somewhere within you. Sometimes you feel like if you slip or you make a mistake, then something bad's going to happen. Something negative is going to happen. If you don't make it perfect, it's your fault if something bad happens. If you don't make the perfect proposal for your job and they miss the grant funding or whatever, they miss the job, or they're not selected, it's because your proposal was so crappy, right? If your kid doesn't make the baseball team, it's because you didn't show up to enough conferences, you weren't involved in the games enough, right? If you weren't doing enough with the neighborhood watch or the community, that's why your neighbors don't like you. So it's all these things about always trying to do more and more and more to make it perfect so that you're accepted, not because you have high standards, but because acceptance is important to your safety and survival. So a lot of times, again, these aren't personality traits, they're not flaws, but they aren't necessarily who we are at our core. They can be parts of us for sure, and they can absolutely help us get to places that we need to get to, and they can be instrumental in that. But the key is in knowing when there's a voluntary versus an involuntary response in those situations. So they can make you competent and capable and safe and impressive, but they can also be exhausting if you don't need them anymore, right? They'll keep exhausting you until your nervous system really learns that it's safe to do something different. And that's really the key here. It's not about saying that, oh, I'm just an overworker. That's just the way I am. I'm overachiever. I've always been that way. That's great. It probably got you a lot of places, a lot of opportunities, and it's important to use that as your superpower when you need to. But it's also important to pull back. Like you can't be hypervigilant with high standards, high expectations, like with your kids or your family, because you're setting yourself up to fail and you're setting them up to fail. So in work and school, that might work great for you. And those are the arenas in which you let it shine. But when it comes to family, you can't have these perfectionist tendencies because humans are human and we make mistakes. And having the fawn response where you're just kind of whatever, go with the flow, that's fine. That probably helps you get far in a lot of places. However, it doesn't help you when you need to have an opinion. Sometimes you get to places in life where you're like, I don't know what I like. I don't know who I am. I don't know what excites me. I don't know what my hobbies are. I don't know what I don't like. I'm okay with anything. And that can be okay to an extent as long as you have something meaningful and purposeful in life. But if you don't, that can be problematic. It can cause issues for you. It can make you feel like you just kind of feel lost, right? And then the fight response, the relentless drive, the always overachieving. Again, it's about recognizing, is this helping me achieve something? And then once I achieve it, I have to tell my nervous system and feel it in my body that I'm okay and safe. Or is this just like go, go, go all the time? I never feel like it's enough. So that's really important distinction. I'm not saying that any of those three trauma type situations are negative in any way. They help us, but the problem becomes when they are involuntary and you can't stop them and they become draining and exhausting. So I hope that helps. Please feel free to drop a comment down below if you'd like me to answer a question. If you'd like to stay anonymous, go to the website. I'll drop that in the description. You can go to the website and click contact me and send me your question and I will answer it on here anonymously for you. Please like if you found this video helpful and share if you find it might be helpful with someone else. And I will see you on the next video.